Jessica Martinez grew up invisible. Born in February 1989 in a cramped apartment in South Dallas, Texas, she entered a world that had already decided she didn't matter much. Fourth child in a family of 6, the middle girl nobody paid attention to. She learned early that survival meant staying quiet and out of the way. Her father, Miguel Martinez, worked construction during the day and stocked shelves at a grocery store 3 nights a week. He was a ghost in his own home, present only in the exhausted silence he brought with him after 16-hour shifts. Her mother, Rosa, suffered from what doctors would later call chronic depression, though no one bothered with diagnoses back then. Rosa spent entire weeks in bed with the curtains drawn, leaving young Jessica to figure out meals, homework, and life on her own. The Martinez household ran on a cruel economy of attention. Boys got what little their father had to give. Girls were expected to raise themselves and stay out of trouble. Jessica watched her brothers receive praise for mediocre grades, while her straight-A report cards went unnoticed on the kitchen counter. She learned that excellence without an audience is just loneliness in disguise. Money was a constant source of anxiety. The electricity got shut off so many times Jessica stopped counting. Dinner was often just beans and rice, sometimes for days straight. She wore clothes from church donation boxes, already worn thin by previous owners, always 2 sizes too big or too small. School offered no escape from the cruelty of poverty. Children have a radar for weakness, and Jessica's classmates found hers immediately. The mocked her shoes with holes in the soles, her hair she cut herself because salon visits cost money they didn't have, her lunch that came from the free meal program. One girl in 7th grade told her she smelled like poor people. Jessica went home that afternoon and scrubbed herself raw in the bathtub, crying so hard she thought her chest would crack open. That night, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, she started a habit that would define her entire life. She counted her flaws: nose too wide, lips too thin, skin not smooth enough, hair not pretty enough, body not shaped right. The list grew longer every time she looked. Psychologists who evaluated Jessica years later would point to these childhood experiences as the foundation of what they termed severe appearance-based anxiety disorder. She internalized a belief that her worth as a human being was directly tied to how she looked, and that if she could just change enough things about herself, maybe someone would finally see her. Maybe someone would finally think she mattered. At 17, something happened that changed everything. Jessica had been babysitting for neighbors and saving every dollar for 9 months. With that money, she bought her first real outfit from an actual store. Not secondhand, not donated, not borrowed. Hers. A dress that fit her perfectly in a color that made her skin glow. She wore it to school on a Monday morning, and the world shifted. People looked at her differently. A boy who had never spoken to her asked for her name. A teacher complimented her appearance. "When I looked good, people finally saw me," she would later tell a court-appointed therapist. That was the moment she understood the equation. External transformation equals internal worth. Change your body, change your life. She believed this with every cell in her being. After graduating high school in 2007, Jessica enrolled in cosmetology school because it was affordable and practical. By 2011, she was working at a mid-level salon in downtown Dallas, and she was talented, really talented. Clients requested her by name. She had a gift for making women feel beautiful, confident, worthy of attention. The irony was devastating. She spent every day making others feel gorgeous while hating every inch of her own reflection. The salon paid inconsistently, good months followed by terrible ones. Jessica lived paycheck to paycheck, sharing an apartment with 2 other stylists just to afford rent. She dreamed of owning her own business someday, but the dream felt as distant as the moon. Then came Instagram. By 2016, social media had become her obsession. She followed influencers who showcased perfect bodies, designer clothes, exotic vacations, and lives that seemed lit from within. She scrolled for hours every night, comparing her cramped apartment and inconsistent income to images that were filtered, curated, and often completely fabricated. The comparison poisoned everything. Why couldn't she have what they had? Why didn't her life look like that? The answer seemed obvious. She just needed to change enough things about herself. She just needed the right opportunity, the right transformation, the right man who could lift her out of this life and into the one she deserved. What Jessica didn't understand was that no amount of external change would ever fill the emptiness inside her. She was chasing something that didn't exist, and that chase would eventually cost her everything. In the summer of 2016, opportunity walked into her life wearing an expensive suit and a smile that made her forget every insecurity she had ever carried. His name was Marcus Bennett, and he had no idea that the woman cutting hair at his sister's wedding would one day stand over him with a loaded gun, demanding that he love her forever. Marcus Bennett was born in September 1986 in Austin, Texas, to a family that valued achievement above all else. His father, Robert Bennett, was a successful corporate attorney. His mother, Dr. Patricia Bennett, taught sociology at the University of Texas for 30 years. They raised Marcus with clear expectations. Excellence was not negotiable, and shortcuts were for people who didn't respect themselves. Growing up in a comfortable home in West Austin, Marcus had access to resources most kids in his community could only dream about. Private tutors, summer programs, travel abroad. But his parents made certain he understood that privilege came with responsibility. He was expected to earn his accomplishments, not coast on his family name. His mother held particularly strong views about authenticity and self-worth. She never wore makeup, dressed in simple classic styles, and kept her hair natural her entire life. Beauty is temporary, she would tell her son. Character is permanent. Never trust someone who thinks they can buy their way to happiness. Those words would echo in Marcus's mind years later in a hospital bed, wondering how he had missed every single warning sign. Marcus was raised to value discipline and hard work. He started working out at 16 and maintained that habit religiously, 5 days a week without exception. He didn't drink alcohol, didn't smoke, and avoided processed foods. He believed in building yourself from the inside out through dedication rather than external modifications. When friends talked about getting tattoos or cosmetic procedures, Marcus simply shook his head. That wasn't how the Bennett family operated. His academic path reflected his family values perfectly. Marcus graduated top of his class and earned a full scholarship to the University of Texas. He studied finance and economics, following in his mother's intellectual footsteps while forging his own path in the business world. After completing his undergraduate degree, he earned his MBA from Rice University. By 2013, at just 27 years old, he was working as a senior financial analyst at a major investment firm in downtown Dallas, earning a 6-figure salary. But Marcus wasn't flashy with his money. He owned a modest townhouse in the uptown neighborhood, drove a practical car despite being able to afford something far more expensive, and put most of his earnings into savings and investments. His mother had taught him that wealth was measured by what you kept, not what you spent. His friends sometimes teased him about being too conservative, too careful, too boring, but Marcus didn't care. He knew who he was, and he was comfortable in his own skin. Patricia Bennett watched her son grow into a man with tremendous pride, but she also harbored a quiet worry. She knew her son had a weakness he couldn't see. Marcus believed he could save people. He had a hero complex that made him attracted to women who needed fixing, women who had problems he thought his love could solve. You cannot love someone into being whole, she warned him once. Some people have holes inside them that no amount of affection can fill. They will drain you dry and then blame you for being empty. Marcus listened politely, but he didn't really hear her. He was young and optimistic and believed that love was enough to fix anything. In August 2016, Marcus flew to Dallas for his sister's wedding. The ceremony was held at a beautiful venue outside the city, and the reception was one of the most elegant parties Marcus had ever attended. He found himself at a table near the salon team his sister had hired for the day. That's when he saw her. Jessica Martinez was stunning. Warm brown eyes, an infectious smile, energy that seemed to light up everything around her. She introduced herself as one of the stylists who had worked on the bridal party. She had almost not come to the reception, she admitted, because she felt out of place. They talked for hours that night. Marcus was captivated by her ambition, her dreams of owning her own salon someday, her stories about growing up in Dallas. When the reception ended, Marcus asked for her number. Jessica gave it to him, certain a man like this would never actually call. She was wrong. He called the next morning. "I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation," he said. "Can I take you to dinner tonight?" And just like that, two people from completely different worlds began a journey that would end in blood for 18 months. Marcus and Jessica maintained a relationship that seemed perfect from the outside. He drove to her apartment twice a week after work, bringing dinner from restaurants she had only seen on TV. He paid for everything without being asked, and without making her feel small about it. Her car broke down one month, and he covered the repairs without hesitation. She needed dental work she'd been putting off for years, and he paid the bill. When she came up short on rent, he transferred money before she even had to ask twice. Looking back, the pattern was established early. Marcus gave and Jessica received. It wasn't that she demanded things from him. In fact, she often said she didn't need his help and could figure things out on her own. But she never refused the money when he offered it. And Marcus, who had grown up with resources and privilege, didn't see the imbalance forming between them. To him, this was simply what love looked like. You took care of the person you cared about. His mother saw things differently. During a family dinner in early 2017, Patricia pulled her son aside. "She's keeping score," his mother said quietly. "She's comparing everything. What she has versus what everyone else has. That's not contentment, Marcus. That's hunger. And it's a hunger that never gets satisfied." Marcus told his mother she was being unfair, that Jessica was just adjusting to a new relationship. Patricia said nothing more, but her expression spoke volumes. What Marcus didn't know was that Jessica had daily phone calls with her best friend from the salon, a woman named Brittany Chun. Brittany lived for attention, for validation, for being seen. She dated men who bought her expensive gifts and discarded them when they stopped spending. She measured her worth in Instagram followers and designer handbags. And she filled Jessica's head with ideas that had no place in a healthy relationship. Every time they talked, Brittany would show off something new. A designer purse from her latest boyfriend. A vacation to Cancun paid for by a man whose name she barely remembered. A new hairstyle that cost more than most people's rent. Jessica listened to these updates and felt something twisting inside her. Here she was, with a successful boyfriend who treated her well, and yet Brittany seemed happier, freer, more alive. In December 2017, Marcus took Jessica to dinner at one of the finest restaurants in downtown Dallas. After dessert, he reached across the table and took her hand. "I've been thinking about our future," he said, "and I can't imagine it without you." He got down on one knee. The ring was a 2-carat diamond set in platinum, more beautiful than anything Jessica had ever owned. She said yes before he even finished the question. They married in May 2018 in a small ceremony at a private venue outside Dallas. Only immediate family attended. Patricia Bennett was there, sitting in the back row, her face carefully composed into something that resembled happiness, but wasn't quite. She smiled for photographs and hugged her new daughter-in-law when required, but she said little throughout the day. That night, after the celebration ended, Patricia turned to her husband and spoke words she had been holding inside for months. "He's making a mistake," she said. "That girl has a hole inside her that nothing will ever fill. Mark my words, Robert, this will not end well." Jessica moved into Marcus's townhouse immediately after the wedding. For the first few months, everything seemed perfect. She decorated the space, cooked elaborate dinners, played the role of devoted wife, but she didn't transfer her cosmetology license. She didn't look for work at any Dallas salons. When Marcus gently asked about her plans, she said she wanted to settle in first. He accepted this because he loved her, and because he made enough money for both of them. By late 2018, Marcus had started noticing things he had previously overlooked. Jessica spent hours on her phone scrolling through social media instead of pursuing any goals. She shopped constantly, filling closets with clothes she wore once. And whenever they visited his family, she seemed more interested in what other people had than in the conversations happening around her. In January 2019, everything changed. Jessica was scrolling through Instagram when a post stopped her cold. Brittany Chun had posted before and after photos that made Jessica's breath catch. Brittany had gotten a Brazilian butt lift, and the transformation was dramatic. Her body had been completely reshaped. The caption read, "New year, new me. Best investment I ever made." Jessica stared at those photos for hours. When Marcus came home that night, she showed him without explanation. "Oh my God," she said. "Brittany got a BBL. She looks incredible, doesn't she?" Marcus glanced at the screen and shrugged, unimpressed. "She looks fake," he said flatly. "That's not real." But Jessica wasn't finished. "Would a BBL look good on me?" Marcus turned to face her fully, his eyes serious. "No," he said. "And I would never want you to do something like that." Marcus reminded her of everything she already knew. His beliefs about natural bodies, his commitment to earning transformation through hard work rather than surgical shortcuts. This, he said firmly, was where he drew the line. Jessica didn't argue. She simply nodded, said okay, and fell silent. But something in her eyes shifted, something Marcus was too tired to notice. For the next 5 days, Jessica barely spoke to her husband. She cooked his meals, slept beside him, performed all the duties of a wife. But she wasn't really there. She was punishing him with silence, waiting for him to break, to apologize, to give her permission. On the 6th day, everything changed. Jessica woke Marcus with a kiss and an apology that seemed completely sincere. "I was being stupid," she told him, her voice soft and loving. "You're right. I don't need that surgery. I don't know what I was thinking." Relief flooded through Marcus. He kissed her back and told her he loved her just the way she was. And then Jessica said the words that would seal both their fates. "I want to make you proud," she said. "I'm ready to start that business you offered to help me with." Marcus's heart swelled with hope. Finally, she was ready to build something of her own. Jessica presented a business plan that evening. She wanted to create a hair extension line, high-quality products for women who wanted premium options at reasonable prices. She showed him suppliers, pricing structures, potential profit margins. The presentation wasn't sophisticated, but it showed effort. It showed intention. Marcus was so happy he didn't question any of it. He didn't ask why she had suddenly changed her mind after 5 days of silence. He didn't wonder why her business plan had appeared so quickly, as if she had been working on it for weeks. He simply saw what he wanted to see. The woman he married finally stepping into her potential. She asked for $75,000 to launch the business. She said she needed to travel to Los Angeles to meet with suppliers and manufacturers. "I'll be back in 4 days," she promised. Marcus asked if he could come with her, but she shook her head gently. "This is something I need to do on my own," she said, "to prove to myself that I can." That night, Marcus transferred $75,000 into his wife's personal account. He added another $3,000 for flights and hotels. He kissed her forehead and told her how proud he was. He had no idea that everything she had told him that evening was a carefully constructed lie. On February 7th, 2019, Jessica kissed her husband goodbye at the door of their townhouse. She had a carry-on bag and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. 4 days, she said. "I'll call you every night." Marcus watched her drive away, already imagining the successful business she would build. He didn't know the car was heading to the airport. He didn't know she had booked a flight, but the ticket wasn't for Los Angeles. The destination on her boarding pass read Miami, Florida. The business plan was fiction. The suppliers didn't exist. And the $78,000 his wife was carrying would not be used to build a hair extension line. It would be used to get the surgery he had explicitly forbidden, behind his back, with his money, while she lied to him every single night on the phone. The clinic was in a strip mall in North Miami, tucked between a nail salon and a check cashing store. It wasn't a hospital. It wasn't an accredited surgical center. It was a clinic that offered Brazilian but lift procedures at prices that undercut legitimate facilities by thousands of dollars. Jessica had found it through a friend of Brittany's, someone who claimed the results were just as good as the expensive places. The red flags were everywhere. The waiting room had plastic chairs and flickering fluorescent lights. The consultation lasted less than 15 minutes. The surgeon, whose credentials would later be questioned in court, didn't ask detailed questions about her medical history. He didn't explain the risks in depth. He simply scheduled the procedure for 2 days later and collected his payment in cash. The surgery cost $14,000. Recovery accommodations in a nearby apartment ran another $5,000. That left Jessica with over $59,000 Marcus would never know about. Money she planned to keep hidden. Money that represented freedom. The procedure took place on February 9th, 2019. When performed correctly, a Brazilian butt lift involves harvesting fat from one area of the body and injecting it into the buttocks to create curves. When performed incorrectly, the fat can lose blood supply and begin to die inside the body. The surgery went faster than expected. Jessica woke up in more pain than she had anticipated, but the staff assured her this was normal. They gave her painkillers and sent her to the recovery apartment with instructions to rest. By day 3 after the procedure, something was wrong. Jessica developed a fever that came and went throughout the day. The surgical site was hot to the touch, swollen beyond what the informational pamphlet had described as normal. She called the clinic in a panic, and they told her to increase her antibiotics. They told her to stay off her feet. They told her these things happen sometimes, and not to worry. She tried to believe them, but the pain was getting worse, not better. And there was something else, something she noticed on day 10 that made her stomach turn with fear. She was lying in bed trying to rest when an odor reached her nose. It was faint at first, barely noticeable. She checked the garbage. She checked the refrigerator. She opened windows and sprayed air freshener, but the smell didn't go away. It grew stronger. And then, with a horror she couldn't put into words, she realized where it was coming from. The smell was coming from her, from inside her body, from the place where a surgeon had injected fat that was now dying beneath her skin. She scrubbed herself in the shower for an hour that night. The smell remained. Fat necrosis is a medical condition where transplanted fat cells die because they fail to establish adequate blood supply in their new location. When fat cells die, they don't simply disappear. They break down, they decompose. And as they decompose, they release toxins and gases the body cannot easily eliminate. The odor that results is not body odor in any normal sense. It is the smell of internal decomposition, of tissue rotting beneath the skin. Every night during those weeks in Miami, Jessica called her husband and lied. She told him the meetings with suppliers were productive. She told him she was learning so much about the business. She told him she missed him and couldn't wait to come home. And Marcus, who trusted his wife completely, believed every word. By day 16, he started getting suspicious about the timeline. 4 days, he reminded her during one call. You said 4 days. She told him negotiations were taking longer than expected, that the best suppliers required more convincing. He accepted the explanation because he wanted to believe her. By day 20, Marcus was genuinely worried. He asked for photos from the meetings, evidence that things were going well. Jessica sent him stock images she found on the internet, pictures of office buildings and business meetings that had nothing to do with her. He didn't notice the inconsistencies. Meanwhile, in that Miami apartment, Jessica could barely leave the bed. The fever came and went. The pain was constant. And the smell was getting worse with every passing day. On March 3, 2019, 24 days after she had left Dallas, Jessica finally booked a flight home. She was running out of money. The smell had become impossible to ignore. And she could no longer avoid the reality that she would have to face her husband and confess what she had done. She told herself it would be okay. She told herself he would forgive her like he always did. She told herself that once he saw her new body, once he understood how much better she looked, he would forget about the lies. She was wrong about all of it. When she walked through the arrival gate at Dallas Airport, Marcus was waiting with flowers in his hand. He expected to see his wife returning from a successful business trip. What he saw instead was a woman who walked slowly, carefully, like she was in tremendous pain. A woman who wouldn't make eye contact. A woman whose marriage was about to collapse. For 4 days after Jessica returned to Dallas, Marcus said nothing. He noticed something was off, but he couldn't pinpoint what it was. She slept on the far edge of the bed, as far from him as possible. She wore multiple layers of clothing at all times. She showered 4 times a day, scrubbing until her skin was raw. She sprayed perfume so liberally the townhouse smelled like a department store. On the morning of the 5th day, it happened. Marcus was in the kitchen making coffee when Jessica walked in wearing a thin robe. She had let her guard down, too exhausted to maintain the layers of protection she had been using. The moment she entered the room, Marcus stopped moving. His face changed, his nostrils flared. He recoiled backward, nearly knocking over his coffee mug. "What is that smell?" he asked, his voice strange and distant. Jessica froze. She knew exactly what he was smelling. She'd been living with it for weeks. The odor filled the kitchen, thick and unmistakable, like something decaying in a sealed container. Jessica panicked. She made excuses about the garbage, about something in the refrigerator, about a dead animal trapped somewhere in the walls. Marcus didn't look convinced. He left for work with a confused expression on his face. That night when he came home, Jessica made a desperate decision. She thought that if she could be intimate with him, if she could remind him of their connection, everything would somehow be okay. What happened next would haunt her for years. The moment she undressed, the smell hit him full force. Marcus's face contorted, his body convulsed. He turned away from her and vomited right there in the bedroom. The sound of his retching filled the space between them, and Jessica stood frozen, half undressed. watching her husband empty his stomach because the smell of her body had made him physically ill. By morning, he confronted her. He stood in the bedroom doorway with an expression she had never seen before. Cold, disgusted, final. "Don't you understand you're rotting down there?" he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "You deceived me. You used my money to get a BBL. This marriage is over." Through tears and desperate pleas, she tried to explain. She told him about Miami, about Brittany's recommendation, about the clinic that had seemed legitimate, about the complications no one had warned her about. He listened without expression. When she finished, he said, "My lawyer will contact you. Get treatment. This isn't body odor. This reeks of death." Then he grabbed his keys and walked out. The divorce papers arrived by courier 3 days later. Jessica found herself completely alone. The townhouse was in his name. The bank accounts had been frozen. She called the only person she could think of. Brittany Chun answered and offered to let her stay. But by the third day, Brittany's boyfriend complained about the smell. On day 6, Brittany asked her to leave. "You did this to me," Jessica said as she packed her bags. Brittany simply closed the door. With the last of her hidden money, Jessica found a surgeon who performed corrective surgery to remove the dead tissue. The procedure cost $28,000. It took place on March 25, 2019. The smell faded, her body healed, and she began to believe that if Marcus saw her now, fixed and better, he would take her back. In early May, Jessica showed up at Marcus's office building. She waited across the street until she saw him walk out. She crossed the street and approached him. "Marcus," she said desperately, "I'm fixed now. I got the surgery reversed. I don't smell anymore. Look at me. I'm better. I'm the woman you married." Marcus looked at her with an expression that never changed. "Too late," he said simply. "You disgust me. I can't believe I ever touched you." Before Jessica could respond, another woman appeared at his side. A tall woman with natural hair stepped close to Marcus and took his arm. "Everything okay, baby?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "Let's go." They walked away together without looking back. Something fundamental broke inside Jessica that day. She returned to Dallas and spiraled into alcoholism and prescription painkillers. She rented a room in a boarding house and spent her days checking Marcus's social media obsessively. She created fake accounts to watch him. She left threatening comments on his new girlfriend's posts. In September 2019, Marcus announced his engagement to the woman named Alicia Ross. Jessica stared at the post until her vision blurred. Then she made a decision. She bought a 9mm handgun through a private sale for $450. She practiced shooting in rural areas outside Dallas. She wasn't a good shot, but she kept practicing. Her journal entries from this period are chilling. September 21st. "I have protection now." October 8th. "He needs to understand what he did." November 3rd. "I'm ready." On March 19th, 2020, Jessica drove to Dallas and waited outside Marcus's townhouse. When he pulled into his driveway at 7:15 that evening, she stepped out from behind a parked car. "Marcus," she said, "come back to me. Leave Alicia. I won't let any other woman have you." Marcus raised his hand slowly. "Desiree, you need help. Go home. We're done." "Say you love me," she demanded, pulling the gun from her waistband. "Say you'll take me back." Marcus stared at her. "I can't do that. You need treatment, not me. I will never take you back." She fired. And the first bullet struck him in the shoulder. He stumbled. The second hit him in the chest. He fell, and then Jessica emptied the entire magazine. 18 shots in rapid succession. 18 bullets into the man she claimed to love more than anything in the world. Neighbors called 911. Police arrived within 5 minutes. They found Marcus Bennett lying in a pool of blood, multiple gunshot wounds visible across his body. His breathing was shallow, but he was alive. They found Jessica kneeling beside him, the gun on the ground, her hands covered in blood. She offered no resistance. She simply looked up at them with empty eyes and said, "He was supposed to love me forever." Marcus survived after 14 hours of surgery. Jessica was charged with attempted first-degree murder. In January 2021, she was convicted and sentenced to 40 years in prison. She remains incarcerated at the Mountain View Unit in Gatesville, Texas. Her next parole hearing is scheduled for 2041. Marcus married Alicia Ross in 2022. He works as a financial consultant and advocates for victims of domestic violence. He walks with a permanent limp and carries the scars of that night with him every single day.